You can tell a lot about the state of a state just by looking at the symbols they choose to represent themselves. Some states have state dinosaurs. Some have state guns. My home state of Florida has 2 state mammals and 2 state fish, and a state beverage, orange juice. But you can't tell much from the state birds because the state birds are garbage. Well, not all of them. Louisiana has a pelican, New Mexico has the roadrunner, and California has a quail that just looks like California birdsonified. But let's look at Texas. Texas, I would assume, would have something big like the black vulture, or fierce like a red-tailed hawk, or obnoxious like a grackle. But in 1927, Texas chose the mockingbird to be its symbol. Mockingbirds are pretty common in the South, so I guess that makes sense, but to me, mockingbirds don't really scream Texas, unless I scream Texas at them first. Or look at Tennessee. When I think of Tennessee, I think of the one time I was walking in Memphis and I saw a black pyramid looming over the Mississippi River. In big silver letters on its southern face were the words, "Ducks Unlimited." This is real, by the way, it's a Bass Pro Shop. So maybe Tennessee should pick some sort of game bird to hunt with their state bear M8 too. But in 1933, they chose the mockingbird. Do you see the problem here? Let's look at another 2 states that chose the exact same bird. Mississippi and Arkansas both chose also the mockingbird. 4 states all copied each other and chose the mockingbird. I'll let the irony settle for a bit as we pan over to a state that actually knows what it's doing. There's really only one bird that Florida could have picked. It's on all the postcards, it's on the lottery, it's in all the bathrooms. It's also the mockingbird. So, clearly something went very wrong. Let's compare the United States to the gold standard of bird symbols, the territories and provinces of Canada. You've got 2 raptors, 3 different owls, wild cards like the raven of Yukon, the goose of Saskatchewan, the loon of Ontario, and by far the best, the puffin. We could use this as an example to come up with some rules as to what makes a good bird symbol. Let's start really basic, something that no state should mess up. Number 1, it should be a species of bird. Okay, 3 states are already down. The Rhode Island red and the Delaware blue hen aren't species, but breeds of chicken. But it's unique enough, so I'll give it a pass. But what's going on in Utah? Well, Utah's state bird is the seagull. Hey Utah, bud, you're a landlocked state, you don't have a sea. If you have a question about why something is the way it is in Utah, the answer is usually Mormons. The story goes that in 1848, Brigham Young led the Mormons to Salt Lake Valley. There, the pioneers survived a harsh winter, then in the spring, they were finally able to plant a field of crops. Things were looking up until a swarm of crickets flew over and said, "This is our town." Biblical plague spread through their crops, eating everything in their path. Then on June 9th, a massive flock of seagulls flew over and said, "This is our town." They ate all the crickets, which saved the lives of the settlers. The Mormons call this the miracle of the gulls. They put up a monument and honored them with a state bird. The problem is Utah just calls their state bird the seagull, and for some reason they haven't actually defined what species of seagull it should be. It should be easy enough just to use the species of gull that actually live in the Salt Lake and clarify that the state bird is the California gull. Oh. Well, let's move on and look at rule number 2. Number 2, it should be native to the state. 3 more down. There's the chickens again. South Dakota has the ring-necked pheasant, which was introduced as early as 1773 as a game bird. I think with this and the chicken, we should add an addendum to the rule to allow for game birds. The rule was mostly just to prevent all the invasive species, like the European starlings. In 1890, Eugene Stefflin had the idea that he should introduce all of the birds that were mentioned in Shakespeare's plays to North America, so he released 100 starlings in Central Park. Now there's 200 million of them. Finally, let's look at rule number 3. This is the big one. Rule number 3. It should be a unique pick to the state. States. 31 out of 50 have duplicate birds. The northern mockingbird isn't even the most common. It just has 5 states. Meadowlarks have 6 and cardinals have 7. At first glance, this seems to be regional to where the birds live, and it is for the meadowlark, but both the cardinal and the mockingbird live throughout the country. Also, New York and Missouri both have the eastern bluebird, but they're culturally sister states, so I suppose that tracks. But 3 very remote states have the American goldfinch. Iowa and New Jersey call it the eastern goldfinch, whereas Washington insists it's called the willow goldfinch, but it's called the American goldfinch. How do we get to the point where more than half the states all picked the same bird? Idaho, 1928. School children are given a short list of birds to vote on. A, the meadowlark, which at the time was already the state bird of Oregon and Wyoming. B, the bluebird. They didn't define a species, but it's the mountain bluebird, which Nevada would also pick later on. Or C, the robin, which 3 other states would eventually pick. The kids chose the blue one, and that was that. But Miss Everett Barton, chairman of conservation for the Idaho Federation of Women's Clubs, thought that they should go with something with more historical significance to Idaho, the western tanger. It was mentioned by Lewis and Clark when they passed through Idaho. She launched a campaign to convince the public and the governor to choose the western tanger instead. Governor Baldridge had never seen a tanger in his life, so he chose the blue one. Chairman Barton was kicked out of the club. But she was right. The western tanger would have been a much better pick. She wouldn't be the last to make a campaign to change the state bird. People have created Facebook groups and the always effective online petition. I found one in West Virginia to change the state bird from the cardinal to Mothman. You might argue that Mothman is not a bird, or that Mothman isn't real. To this, I say, Scotland's national animal is a unicorn, which is not a real animal. There have been many more Mothman sightings than unicorn sightings. This only breaks one of my rules, so sure. But what if there was a better way to figure out what the state bird should be? Maybe we should look at the uniqueness of birds to states. I used the 2020 eBird dataset on regional range and abundance to figure this out. I was able to see the population of each bird for every state. Now I just need to create a formula to figure out the uniqueness points, or bird up. It's pretty straightforward, but I was noticing this formula was favoring birds that mostly lived in Canada and Mexico, and just occasionally entered the border states. To fix this, I added a bonus point to favor birds that are unique to the US. This means if a bird is totally unique to the US and totally unique to a state, it gets 2 points, meaning it's endemic to the state. Are there any states that have an endemic bird? Yes, 5 of them. Idaho has the Cassia crossbill, which was just recently declared a species in 2017. New bird dropped. Alaska has one as well, the McKay's bunting, although most of the time these birds live out in a remote island in the Bering Sea. St. Matthew Island, although you could debate if this is part of Alaska since it's long been abandoned. The US Coast Guard once set up a station here. In 1944, they introduced 29 reindeer as an emergency food source. Then they left a few years later, leaving all the reindeer. Free to have the whole island to themselves, the reindeer's population boomed to 6,000 in 1963. 2 years later, there were 42. By the 80s, they were all gone. Wonder why that happened. California has 2 endemic birds, the yellow-billed magpie and the island scrub jay, although I'd go with the magpie since the scrub jay is mostly just restricted to Santa Cruz Island. Islands are a pretty good way of creating unique species, it turns out. This island is also home to the endemic lizard, the island fence lizard, and the endemic mammal, the tiny island fox. Speaking of islands, let's check out Hawaii. Hawaii gets to keep their state bird, the nene, since it's endemic. Although they had a ton to choose from since Hawaii has 71 endemic birds. Well, they had 71. A lot of them went extinct due to environment destruction and diseases like the avian flu, which were brought over by European colonizers. But they still have 40-ish left to choose from, for now. Besides Hawaii, only one other state actually gets to keep their state bird, South Dakota with the ring-necked pheasant, which got a bird up of 0.513. Let's look at what the rest of the states got. First impressions are a lot of warblers. Why are there 100 species of warblers? Rule number 4, no warblers. Oh, okay, we can count warblers, but I'm adding a backup bird. Another problem is that there's a ton of states that wound up with birds named after other states. Missouri has the Kentucky warbler, or their backup, the Louisiana water thrush. Even worse, New Hampshire has the Canada warbler, or, you know, if they want to go for their backup, that's the broad-winged hawk, which is the only raptor that I found. Your choice. There's also some interesting results. Every bird in the the Tympanuchus genus is represented. In Montana, the sharp-tailed goose. In Nebraska, the greater prairie chicken. In Kansas, the lesser prairie chicken. Wyoming also has a sage goose, but it's a different family. 3 swans are also represented as well. The trumpeter swan in Minnesota, the tundra swan in North Carolina, and the mute swan in New York. Wait, that one isn't native. They get the great cormorant. There's a lot of rearranging going on in the Northeast. Vermont stole the chickadee from Maine and Massachusetts. Then, Maine stole the purple finch from New Hampshire. Unexpectedly, Illinois has the common grackle and not Texas. Texas has the black-crested titmouse. Now that screams Texas to me. Utah was actually really close to getting the seagull. It's way more common in Utah than California, but they wound up with the terrifying eared grebe. Finally, let's get to what this whole exercise is for. I can prove that the state bird of Florida should be the Florida scrub jay. Huh? Wouldn't flamingos be the most unique? I know they're not completely endemic, but they would be the most unique to Florida. Well, the problem is, flamingos aren't native to Florida. Here at the bottom of the Everglades lies the Flamingo Campground at Flamingo Beach, named after the pink birds that live there. However, these are not flamingos, they're Jose spoonbills. What even started this idea that flamingos were in Florida? These are not birds, they are racehorses, and this is Hialeah Park near Miami. In 1934, the owner of the racetrack, Joseph Widener, wanted to capitalize on Miami being a tropical destination and imported a flamboyance of flamingos from Cuba. This is the start. As it says on the Florida government website, if you see a flamingo in the wild, it's probably an escapee from Hialeah Park. So, back when Florida voted on their state bird in 1927, there were no flamingos in the state. But these flamingos people have been spotting in the Everglades look a lot different than the ones at the racetrack. They're a more vibrant pink, which means they have a source of food with carotenoids, whereas the ones at the park are only fed a mixture of ground corn and dog food. The Zoo Miami Conservation Research Department started to look into if flamingos were actually stably living in the wilds of Florida. They found records of early explorers like James Audubon who observed flamingos all around South Florida. They found flamingo eggs in museums collected in the 1800s, which were recorded to be from Florida. Most likely, flamingos were native to Florida, but were hunted to extinction for food and to make hats out of their feathers. If flamingos were recognized as being native to Florida, they would get more protections from the government. But to do that, Zoo Miami needed more proof. They needed to track a flamingo in the wild, but they were proving difficult to catch. Until Conky. September 2015. A family of 3 flamingos are living in a shallow pond in Key West. One day, a storm blows through and the older flamingos dipped, but the younger flamingo Conky decided to stay and make this pond and all of its snails his. The problem is, this pond was at the Naval Air Station in Boca Chica. The Navy tried to get the flamingo to leave, as a collision on the airstrip could be devastating, but Conky wasn't budging. The Navy didn't want to resort to killing a flamingo because it's a flamingo, so they contacted the National Park Service to try and capture it. From there, Zoo Miami, the USDA, the Key West Wildlife Center, and the Navy launched a joint operation to capture the flamingo with a net gun. Conky was banded with the blue tag US-01, the first United States flamingo. He was fitted with a GPS and released into the Everglades. The next day, Conky was found collapsed at the flamingo campground. The snails he had been eating at the air station infected him with liver flukes. But Conky recovered and was released back into the wild. From then on, Conky was tracked flying throughout the Keys, living in Florida. Flamingos are still in the process of being recognized as a native bird. Hopefully the decision should be finalized sometime this year, but Conky is enough proof for me. Going back to the bird up score, we can safely say that Florida has one flamingo out of all 1 flamingos in the US. They're definitely not getting any bonus points though, so we land on a bird up score of 1.00, which should be enough to beat the scrub jay score of 2.00. Remember when I said there were 5 states with endemic birds? Well, Florida is the last one, with the Florida scrub jay. Unlike the California scrub jay, this bird doesn't just live on one island, but up and down the scrublands of central Florida. They're also endangered. Only around 8,000 are believed to exist, and their population is declining due to habitat loss. But if I'm to declare this frumpy-looking blue and brownish bird the symbol of Florida over the flamingo, I want to see them for myself. So I traveled here to the scrublands in Jupiter, Florida, to find the elusive scrub jay. There's only around 9,000 of them left in the wild. Even this environment of scrubland is considered endangered. Part of the reason why their population has been declining is because they actually rely on the cycle of wildfires in the scrublands, wildfires that we've been putting out. Because of this, conservationists have been organizing controlled burns in sanctuaries to try to keep their population stable. Hey. Why am I calling it over like a cat? Okay, they're very cute. I can live with them being the state bird, but I'm still Team Flamingo. So, how do we actually change the state bird of Florida? Well, there's been multiple attempts to actually change it to the scrub jay, but they've all failed. This is because of one lobbyist. It's their pet project to keep the state bird the mockingbird. Mockingbird apologist and former president of the NRA, Marion Hammer. She wrote a column in defense of the mockingbird in the Tampa Bay Times. In the absence of reliable facts and clear reasoning, proponents of changing the state bird from the mockingbird to the scrub jay resort to emotional arguments and verbal attacks on the mockingbird. Most recently, Representative Mark Prafford of West Palm Beach filed a bill to make the change, called the mockingbird an obnoxious, plagiarizing, and promiscuous bully. Mockingbirds chase off intruders, whether it's other birds, humans, or animals, who get too close to their nests. Protecting their homes and babies is not promiscuous bullying. It's natural behavior for any reasonable parent. Bird books and bird research publications reveal that the scrub jay is not even a species. It's merely just one of 4 subspecies of the blue jay. And, unlike the mockingbird, the scrub jay can't even sing. It can only squawk. Huh? All the bird books I've read don't say that the Florida scrub jay is a unique species. It's a frumpy-looking little blue and brownish bird. How dare you? In 1927, the mockingbird was designated as the official state bird of Florida. It is well-established, independent, prolific bird that doesn't need government protection or tax dollars to survive. Is this still about birds? In 2005, Republican Representative Howard Futch tried changing the state bird to the Florida scrub jay. He had the backing of the Florida Audubon Society, a petition signed by 10,000 school kids, and stories about how this bird is so friendly it would eat peanuts from a child's hand.
Objection!
Begging for food isn't sweet, it's lazy and a welfare mentality. This isn't about birds, is it? They eat the eggs of other birds. That's robbery and murder. I don't think scrub jays can even sing. The mockingbird is very criminal. It steals other birds' songs. Oh no, that's just sampling? That's totally okay. It's a vicious sucker. We call it the catbird down in my district because it attacks cats. Oh no, the catbird is a different species of bird. It does look like the This is payback from the NRA. Scrub jays don't harm anyone, and for the NRA to ban them as criminal is absurd. The next thing you know, they'll be wanting to hunt them. Save the state bird. I can already hear the whining. Kiss your property rights goodbye. Okay, so clearly this whole issue has been wrapped too much into politics for anything to be changed anytime soon. All I'll say is that it's very interesting that she would accuse a bird of mooching off the state when... Allegedly. But to fix all the state birds, it's not just Florida that'll need a change. And I think for the most part, that change is going to have to come from the people that voted on the birds in the first place. Students. So, if you're a student looking for community service, a cause to get behind, or some way to start organizing and changing this political system, maybe something symbolic is a good place to start. I think I've come up with some pretty solid replacements, but if you have any other picks of what your state bird should be, let me know. As for Florida, I think I've come up with a compromise. We already have 2 state mammals and 2 state fish.